Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Hopkins with Sparrow Works Therapy and the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. I am a licensed clinical social worker and I work with athletes as well as do mental health therapy in my practice. I am talking today about using imagery in sports. So, using imagery in sports is the idea of visualizing what you're going to do as a way to practice or stay calm or become mentally fit or mentally strong. The first concept I want to cover is the idea that what you think becomes your reality. So, for example, if you see yourself being successful, you're more likely to be successful. If you see yourself being unsuccessful or making a mistake, you're more likely to make a mistake. So, tying into that is the idea that we don't want to focus on don'ts. So, for example, if I said to you, don't think of an orange, don't think of a bright orange. Don't think of that orange with that leathery skin. Don't think of that juicy orange. What are you thinking about? You're probably thinking about an orange. If I instead said, I want you to think about an apple, excuse me, I want you to think about that apple tree. I want you to think about that bright red apple sitting on that apple tree. I want to think about picking that apple off and taking a bite of the apple and feeling that juicy apple and tasting that juicy apple. Now, instead of thinking about an orange, you're thinking about an apple. That concept is exactly what I want to get into. It's the idea that you want to replace the don'ts with what you actually want to achieve. So if I have a gymnast who is afraid of falling off the balance beam, and the gymnast is always thinking, don't fall, what is she seeing in her head? She's seeing fall, right? Thinking about falling. And so if all you see in your head is falling, you're very likely to fall. If you're a basketball player and you think, don't miss this shot, gosh, don't miss this shot, you're seeing in your head yourself missing the shot, and therefore you're more likely to miss the shot. So instead, what I like to work with athletes on is the idea of visual imagery, seeing in your head the success. So an example of this is sitting quietly. At first, when you learn to do this, sometimes you close your eyes and envision yourself taking a shot and the motion involved in taking the shot, the jumping up, the hooking up, the tossing with the hand, hitting the backboard, and in it goes. Or if you're a gymnast, doing a back handspring, you kind of launch out, put your hands back, hit your hands, push off, land on your feet. And you want to spot your landing or spot the beam as you go backwards. So you want to see every single step. And it especially helps if you imagine all the sights, sounds, and smells associated with your success. Now, what would you be hearing? Would you be hearing your hands hitting the beam? Would you be hearing the ball going through the air? What is it you would be hearing? What would you be smelling? Would you smell the ball? Would you smell other people? Would you hear the squeak of tennis shoes on the floor? If you're a gymnast, would you smell chalk? What would you be seeing, of course? So you want to go through all your senses, and you can do this closing your eyes. The next step in using imagery for success is using physical cues that go with your imagery. So the idea of like taking a shot with a basketball, right? Or what it would take to do a back handspring, kind of thinking, go backwards, hands back. Or if you're thinking about doing a full, you're going to pull and around, whatever that physical cue is. And that then gets into the mantra. The mantra are the steps for those things. So you want to have those thoughts in your head, and then eventually you can put all three things together. And what's great about success in sports is success comes from repetition and practice. The more times you do something and do it successfully, the more comfortable you become with doing it, and the more likely you are to be successful in competition. So we can't always be in the gym or on the court or on the field for repetitions, but you can practice through visual imagery in your head and using the physical cues and mantras as extra repetitions. And then another use for this is right before a game or maybe going up to take a shot or right before you compete, you can then again use that imagery in your head and those physical cues and that mantra to walk you through to your success. And that should reduce your anxiety as well because you have something to fall on and something to use to focus you. So you're less worried about what you don't want to happen and more focused on what you do want to happen. And when we see ourselves being successful, then we believe we can be successful. And then that then becomes our reality. Now, you of course will have mistakes. When you have mistakes, you miss a shot or you fall off the beam, or you go to take a shot on goal and you trip over the ball, things like that will happen, even though you use imagery. But when they happen, the trick is to not focus on the mistake that happened, but to move forward saying, that's okay. I know I can be successful at this, and this is how I can, and I'm going to imagine being successful and use that imagery in my head and use the physical cues of my body and my mantra to refocus myself right away so that I can become successful. That's the hardest skill is refocusing after mistakes. But if you use imagery and physical cues to refocus you and to let go of the past, you should be successful. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I'm always glad to help.